Hello, my name's John. I'm a resident of Meadowbrook for the last 10 or 15 years. My question's to Bernard, I think. You mentioned comets coming in. If I could just start, a comet landed in Mountain View, just south of San Francisco, about 10 years ago, and it was called Google. Google brought 35,000 people with it, and a little Mountain View town, which didn't have traffic problems or any other problems, suddenly became overpopulated with overpaid people. I understand the poverty rate in Mountain View is $90,000 a year. If we go ahead with the way you're talking, how do we look after the people, the service people, the teachers, the policemen, the people who work in the markets, in the service stations and all the rest of it? How do they keep up with these high-tech people who are going to come into this new system?
Look, I think that's a great question, and I'm certainly well aware of what's happening around the San Francisco Bay Area, and the greatest admiration for American entrepreneurship, but when it comes to town planning and master planning, we Australians lead the way. We do master planning and city planning in a better way than the Americans. Americans have more of a laissez-faire approach, let it rip. In fact, and that's given them tremendous corporate entities, global corporate entities. We are more measured, we're more considered, we have better planning. If you look at somewhere like so the Monash precinct or the Ryde precinct, in fact, there may well be high areas of high economic value close to those areas, but further away there are places where service workers are able to work. I don't think we want to get to a position where we change fundamentally the character and the opportunity of Logan. I think we can, with due planning and thinking about the future, we can deliver a balanced community going into the future.
And I can see Kerrianne.
Just to sort of follow on from that, Logan City Council's done a lot of work, as you would know, in terms of planning here in Meadowbrook, and part of that planning has been to understand the current and future housing needs for Meadowbrook, for the workers that are likely to come here. And at the moment, from 2011, 2016, there hasn't been a significant number of people that live in the area that are actually working here. And part of that housing strategy is about changing that there are opportunities for people both to live and work here. And that mix of housing that has been identified within that housing strategy is looking at a range of different choices and styles to accommodate those workers.
Thanks, Kerrianne. A question in the back?
Dave Radich, Logan City Council. My question is, so you've seen the business cases and you've seen the master plan. Is Logan and Meadowbrook specifically ready for this comment? If not, what do we need to do to get ready?
I think Logan is in a great position for the comet. I think the preparation that needs to be done over the next few years is going to be critical to actually get it into the right position. But the fact that everyone's in this room and the fact that everybody is so passionate, and there are already so many amazing collaborations around initiatives in Logan, says so much. You do not see that in lots of places. So I would say you're well on the way.
I'd certainly want to see the opportunities here. I'd be very surprised if the community would be happy to see the opportunities go to a nearby municipality and Logan remain the service worker corridor. No. I want opportunities for our kids here and now. I think culturally, ambition, social mobility really should be something that we can deliver in every place in Australia. I was brought up in a housing commission house. Social mobility can transform your life. In fact, that is what we should be delivering in places like Logan, rather than saying, oh, it's too big, it's too hard, too much whatever. We can manage all that. I want to provide opportunities for everyone in every place in Australia.
That's lovely. We've got a question here from the front.
Start with the comment and then a question, I think, Jacinta Powell from Logan Hospital. And, could we go back to the slide just before? Because it's a really nice description of things. One of the things that, some of the things we didn't get to talk about at Logan Hospital yesterday were a couple of things. One, fully digital hospital, and that means not just an electronic medical record, but also integrated devices, developing dashboards, the ability to actually really use data in real time now to guide our decision making, our decision support systems and what we actually do. And that was all implemented in December of last year with barely a blip on the radar. So it goes to the sort of flexibility and adaptability of Logan Hospital and their staff, I think. The other thing that we've implemented there is a thing called Future Hospitals, and we got some funding from Queensland to do this, and we didn't talk about this yesterday either. Was the idea with that is to start to become a laboratory for how hospital and healthcare will be delivered in the future. And I think that's a real opportunity for us, because if you work in a large tertiary centre, things tend to be a bit like this. They're fairly rigid, the ship is very slow to turn as well. But being on the outskirts of Brisbane, having had to make do for many, many years with what we had and be adaptable and be innovative, then I think that we have real opportunity. So I guess I'd be interested to sort of think about, rather than grabbing the comet, actually having the comet's already landed, the tsunami's already breaking over us in terms of activity and demand, is what's the opportunity to actually become a site where things are trialled, different ways of working, different ways of providing healthcare, different types of healthcare workers, could be actually done here in a laboratory style sense.
I think that's a really important point that you've just made, and it's a really exciting vision that we could paint in this area. I think you have got a lot of the data problems sorted out, and I talk to Linda constantly about what's happening here. And I see, having come from Victoria a few years ago, where we struggled, and there are still struggles going on around getting data connected, despite there being EMRs in hospitals. There's still vast gaps between pockets of data, for example, if you're talking about child health. That's changing, but it seems to me that you've solved some of those problems already, and you have a great opportunity to start looking at innovative ways of dealing with some really challenging health problems that everybody's finding quite difficult to do, but you have some infrastructure in place already that would allow you to do exactly what you're describing, real world testing of approaches and evaluation.
We've got time just for one more question. I'm sorry, and is it okay if I just move this just because your faces look a bit odd? There we go. It's better.
Hello. Hi. Maybe more like a contention, and then you can perhaps respond to the contention. And maybe if we can have the previous slide back up again. Very important. So
I'm just being a bit silly, really, because we've got a half green and half white face on everyone. That's all.
That's all right.
You just look a bit ill.
Yes, but you do.
Comments are really good, but not if they land right on top of you. So one of the strengths, weaknesses, challenges, SWOT, risk maybe. One of the biggest risks that I think I've heard in today and yesterday, I would suggest, as an integrated transport and land use strategist myself, is parking. So a fantastic way to completely ruin a place, a location, an opportunity, to limit the opportunities for growth, is to cover that area in parking. And the way that you get to that terrible outcome is through a built-in assumption that parking is the only and the obvious response to transport accessibility issues. And I have to say, I think I've heard some version of that assumption, including maybe from the hospital people themselves, that that's the direction things are moving. You know, the space space is important. Space is limited. One parking space is roughly the same as the amount of space that's allocated to a worker in an office, 10 square metres, whatever it is. Those things actually do physically compete for themselves, between themselves, one for one at the end of the day. So about the transport accessibility opportunity and about parking as an issue. Maybe you could.
Well, I have great faith in the. I'm not a planner or a transport planner, but I have great faith in Logan City Council's ability to manage parking issues going forward with a strategic thinking and planning. I will say that if you take this sort of generational view of suburban job centres, I think it's very interesting development that Parramatta is looking at a light rail network focused on Parramatta. Monash is looking at the same thing. And it's not inconceivable that at some point in the 2030s, there could not be a similar sort of thing emerge, in fact. So the return of light rail, you see it in Sydney CBD, you see it in Canberra, and in these other suburban regional centres. So exactly, yeah. There's all sorts of solutions, including driverless vehicles, which will reshape the demand for parking in the future. I think we can manage those issues. I'll stick with the comets and tsunamis. We've got some great metaphors going here.
I'm just going to let Kerrianne finish just briefly.
Just briefly on that, I guess, as we're planning for a redevelopment and growth and expansion of Meadowbrook overall, you are, as I said before in the earlier comment, if you're providing housing, you're also providing opportunities for people to live and work in the same place as well. So you're by increasing your critical mass and increasing your economic opportunities within an area, also increasing the livability by having that opportunity to live, work, play, learn within the one environment.
And compatible businesses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That whole, we call it the amalgam of attraction, that whole economic term of creating that sort of environment of economics and social and community in one space.
It's called the vibe. The vibe.
And on that note, I think a round of applause.